This week, President Trump said he is hoping to reopen the American economy and adjust social distancing guidelines by mid-April.
I'd love to have it open by Easter. Okay, I would love to have it open by Easter. I will tell you that right now. I would love to have that. It's such an important day for other reasons, but I'll make it an important day for this too. I would love to have the country opened up and just raring to go by Easter.
But the administration's top health experts are far from ready to set a date.
When you have a situation when the cases today compared to tomorrow is increased dramatically, and then the next day is increased dramatically, that's no time to pull back. That's when you got to hunker down, nail down, mitigate, get the people taken care of. That's what you got to concentrate on. You have to go with the data.
Yamiche, is the decision about when to reopen the American economy perhaps the biggest decision of his presidency?
I think so, Bob. The president has been focused on making up this date in his own mind, this Easter Sunday date that he's been talking about and urging and saying, this is what I want. His instincts just led him to that date. There was no scientific data. He wasn't even trying to say that his health experts recommended that might be a good date. The other thing to note is there are some Republican governors that, especially reporting from the Washington Post shows, that there were some Republican governors from Mississippi and other places that were saying maybe it is a little time to ease the White House restrictions and to ease social distancing. But for the most part, you hear health officials saying, no, that's not what we need to do. What we need to do is figure out whether or not we're at the peak of this virus, and most health experts say we're not, and then figure out what we can do going forward to find treatments and maybe a vaccine in about a year. But there's no one other than really President Trump and a couple Republican governors talking about opening up the government. So this is going to be a big decision if President Trump decides to say, you know what, there are parts of the country that I feel are okay to open. He was talking yesterday about possibly Idaho and the Farm Belt. So I think it's still unclear whether or not the president will actually go through with that, but it's going to be a remarkable decision whenever he decides to open the government back up.
Eamon, what would the consequences be of having the economy shuttered through May, through June?
I mean, it's devastating, Bob. And, you know, you heard the vice president was on CNBC today. He was asked about that Easter timeline, and he walked it back, I think, as hard as this vice president can with this president. He said, you know, that was an aspirational date that the president put out there. It does not sound like the vice president believes that that Easter date is realistic either. And what that means for the economy is really horrific. I mean, we're in the red zone here in the economy. We've just never seen a situation like this. I think a lot of policymakers in Washington are assuming that the economy is sort of like a light switch. You can turn it off for now, leave the room dark for a few weeks, and then turn it back on. But the economy is more, the analogy is probably better, it's more like a campfire, right? And it takes a while to get it going, and you build the kindling and put the logs on. And then when you dump a bucket of water on it and snuff it out, you're not going to be able to turn it back on automatically very quickly. It is going to take a lot of stoking and encouraging and some time. And so the longer this goes on, the more time it's going to take to get back to normal. And that's a scary thing for the millions of Americans who filed for unemployment this week and who will do it next week and the week after that, and all the small businesses who are going under and declaring bankruptcy. All of that is terrifying. That fear factor ripples through the American economy. Everybody holds back on investing, spending, hunkers down. That slows everything down even further, and you get the opposite of a virtuous cycle here. You get a real spiral, and that could be a problem. I mean, we're really in uncharted waters here, and nobody knows exactly how this is going to play out. And
I can see that fire looking nice and warm behind you, Eamon. But Manu, what about the pressure points from Capitol Hill on this question of reopening the economy? Is the president getting phone calls?
Well, a lot of Republicans don't want him to act prematurely. I talked to several of them this week, and after the president said that they should offer that Easter timeline is something that he was thinking about, and they said he needs to listen to the medical experts, people like Joni Ernst, a Republican who's up for re-election in Iowa. She said, listen to the medical experts. Let's not set any artificial timeline. Also, some people like Deb Fischer, who is a Republican from Nebraska, who advises the Republican leadership, someone who's aligned with the president on virtually everything, said, we have to be very, very cautious before we move forward. So, and even Lindsey Graham, the president's closest ally at the moment in the Senate, Senate, he's made several public comments this week that the president should not act without considering the data here. So if the president does go this route, he's probably going to get very few people on his side. So and I'm sure he recognizes that as well. So as Eamon was saying, this is an aspirational goal, one that probably doesn't have a lot of political support if the medical community is not behind it.
And governors, Susan's final thought here, quickly, may decide to have their own timelines. And we've seen them step to the fore again and again during this crisis.
And we've seen real friction between governors and the president about what the president should be doing and his criticism of governors for criticizing him.
Thank you very much to everyone for joining us here on a tough week for the whole country. That's all the time we have. And thank you for joining us from your home. We will keep taking you as close to the news as we can every week. But in closing, let us also salute the Americans who are keeping us safe and our nation functioning during this crisis. I'm Robert Costa. Good night from Washington.